Welcome back to the video series about the life of Shakyamuni Buddha. In the previous episode, we heard that the Buddha and the Sangha came to Savatthi, thanks to the Venerable Sariputta, to announce the news. The rich man Sudatta and Prince Jeta welcomed him with respect. The Buddha called them to go home so that he and the Sangha could make their first alms round in the city. They begged for alms, received food from everyone, regardless of rich or poor, and returned to great monastery. After eating, the Buddha and the elders toured the monastery construction site, which was being built on a large scale and with many amenities. The Buddha praised Sudatta's merits and encouraged Prince Jeta to learn the Dharma to bring happiness to himself. Sudatta held a grand offering for the Buddha and the Sangha, and afterward, the Buddha preached the 4 types of happiness for lay people. The Buddha emphasized the importance of taking refuge in the 3 jewels and living an ethical life. After the Dharma, many people asked for refuge, including Sudatta's family. The Buddha also directed Venerable Sariputta to teach precepts to new monks. Finally, Sudatta introduced his younger brother Subhuti, who wanted to become a monk. The Buddha realized that Subhuti had good inborn qualities and agreed to let him become a monk. He assigned Sariputta and the others to stay at Savatthi to maintain the congregation, while he returned to Bamboo Forest with his disciples. The Life of Shakyamuni Buddha, Volume 37. On the way back, due to few people and little work, Venerable Ananda was very happy to follow the Buddha and freely learn about the Dharma. The Venerable said proudly, "Disciples have memorized everything, world-honored one. All the teachings that disciples heard from the world-honored one, or through Brother Sariputta, they knew by heart." There are also some Dharma sessions related to 6 years of asceticism, the realization at the Bodhiruka tree, the 49 days of the world-honored one experiencing the happiness of liberation. The disciples can only hear bits and pieces of each passage. Old Kondanya, Asaji. Buddha knew that well. So in addition to stopping at Mala, meeting Elder Kachudai, listening to the propaganda work here, precepting a number of new bhikkhus in Vaji, in his free time he would tell Venerable Ananda everything in detail. The Dharma sessions at Deer Park, Kapasiya Forest, the trip back to the Bodhi tree to visit Sujatas family, millionaire Senani, little girl Puna, little boy Sothia, how they gave 8 bundles of grass. The Buddha also recounted every detail. The conversion of the 3 Kassapa braided-haired ascetics brothers and 1,000 of their disciples at Uruvela, the Gaya mountain range, on the north bank of the Naranjara River, required many dialogues, many days of patience, and many preachings. Must use magical powers many times. They also need the support of the 4 great heavenly kings, Sakka and Brahma Sahampati, to bring them into the right teachings. During the Dharma session, all Dharmas are on fire on the slopes of Gayasisa mountain. The Buddha's lecture made Venerable Ananda's hair tremble. His whole body moved, and he clearly saw the danger of the world of the 6 desires and 5 senses. The Venerable Anuruddha and his attendant Upavana also benefited a lot. Buddha smiled and said to Anuruddha, "Be diligent and enthusiastic in practicing more, Anuruddha. Seeing 100, 200,000 worlds cannot end suffering and afflictions. Sometimes, after meditating, return to close action, observe and see how the flow of sensations, the flow of perception, the flow of mental formations, the flow of knowledge, and then how they will arise dependently. I will try. Whenever you see any problems or have any questions about anything, just ask." Yes. Arriving at Vasali, the Mahavana forest, the Buddha was surprised that this place seemed to have changed. There was a lecture hall, an incense room dedicated to him, and hundreds of cups scattered here and there. Although the construction materials are only thatch, bamboo, and leaves, they look quite lovely and elegant, very suitable for the simple life of monks. Venerable Vapa, Badiya, Nadi Kassapa, and a large number of monks came out to welcome him from the edge of the forest, everyone looking radiant. They greeted and introduced each other. Bhikkhu Subhuti had the opportunity to know many famous elders. Taking the arranged seat in the lecture hall, the Buddha praised the elders and monks for establishing their own missionary base in this country. Elder Vapa, the oldest, reported everything. World-honored one. Elder Mahakassapa, thanks to living an ascetic life, was able to save many poor people. His 13 early dharmas are truly worthy of being an example for everyone. There are many monks who study them. Elder Asaji is building a facility at Videha. Elder Gayakasapa, who lived in Moria, was also very successful. The Buddha had already met Elder Kadudai at Mala. Currently, the disciples have withdrawn here 100 monks to build a base, because this location is probably quite important in the future. The initiative to make offerings to build this dailam came from a few rich families and homeowners in the area because they had a need to listen to the Dharma and learn it. Perhaps the world-honored one will teach them more precepts in the afternoons. The Buddha was very pleased with the outstanding elders. He said, Great monastery is very large, can accommodate several thousand monks without fear of difficulty in food. Perhaps you should withdraw the number of places to settle there, if there is still time. After the rainy season, note that in the southern Kosala towns, we still have no people. The lands of Kalama, Kasi, Vamsa, and Avanti are vast, but there are only Elder Yasa and about 100 monks. The cities of Varanasi, Kosambi, and the areas opposite the southern bank of the Ganga River are not favorable enough. Particularly at Vasali, the Tathagata will pay attention. That afternoon, the Buddha preached a Dharma session about almsgiving, precepts, and heavenly realms, and then placed the assembly on the precepts, becoming white-robed lay people. In the evening, the Buddha precepted the monks, then gave meditation topics suitable to the abilities of some of the novice monks. The next morning, Buddha set out. Elders Vapa, Bhadia, and Nadi Kasapa came to pay homage. Buddha said to the three, Currently, the internal states of Vaji and Lichavi are not peaceful, especially in Vasali. The elected kings and the group of generals are in conflict and fighting for power, so many unwholesome dharmas have arisen. Many gods, goddesses, and yakshas in this place were not happy, so they left one by one. In the near future, disasters and epidemics will fall on this earth. You and all the monks here should temporarily return to live in bamboo forest during the rainy season. Only 5 or 7 people remain to take care of the facility. What the future will be like here, Tathagata has predicted. The elders all have natural ears and natural eyes. They know that, so they obey and obey. I was planning to return to bamboo forest, but suddenly the Buddha told me to stay a few more days. Turns out it was fate. On the outskirts of Vasali, in the Lichavi Republic, there lived a Brahmin couple famous for their wisdom, erudition, and eloquence. Each person not only learned to understand many different philosophies, but also mastered theoretical methods, so their questioning and answering skills were unmatched. The eldest son, Sakaka, inherited that intelligent bloodline and also inherited his parents' academic skills, so he naturally became a champion star in the debate arena. That's not enough. This outstanding son of the family also extensively researched the ideology of sex inside and outside the contemporary tradition, knowing the advantages, disadvantages, strengths, and weaknesses of those doctrines. Therefore, as he grew older, Sakaka's reputation surpassed his parents, becoming a champion orator. There has never been a monk or Brahmin scholar who can show off his verbal talent and be worthy of being his opponent. And so Sakaka became arrogant and considered the world as trash. Too arrogant and conceited about his education, Sakaka bought a large leather strap to tie his waist. Everyone gathered around to ask why. Sakaka smiled and replied, Words, texts, syntax, heavenly scriptures, thousands of volumes. They live densely in here. If I don't tie it up, I'm afraid that at some point my stomach will burst and I'll die. Sakaka's reputation became even more resounding. The 3 kings and council of generals ruling the Lichavi Federation based in Vasali invited Sakaka to be a tutor for their children and grandchildren. He patted his stomach and said, Available here. If it were divided among the whole world, it wouldn't be enough, let alone just one small country. So you have found the right person. The ignorant, uneducated petty people applaud and praise. As for the wise, they despised them, but they remained silent, secretly ashamed for the young man. During that time, the Buddha, the elders, and many monks went to Vasali, residing in the great forest Mahavana. That news quickly reached Sakaka's ears. He thought to himself, Recently, I have heard about this religion and its founder. The monk Gautama came from the lineage of an emperor. He was originally a talented prince in literature and martial arts. He left the royal position to become a monk and now calls himself Buddha, a great arhat. How crazy and extravagant. Although we have not yet grasped his teachings, let's ask, how much philosophy and human thought do we have? Even if he founded a new doctrine, danced around, talked loudly, he would still be humiliated, defeated, and famous in this land. That day, standing before his congregation, Sakaka arrogantly declared, "I have not seen any monk or Brahmin, whether he is a sect leader, a sect teacher, or an eminent teacher claiming to be Buddha, or any holy method, once answering me, there is no one who is not nervous and scared. Even if we question the pillar without consciousness, it will be scared, shake, and sweat." The whole hall applauded, praised Sakaka without words, and said, "The monk Gautama is very good, very famous, but will eventually be defeated." "That's right, it's not wrong," Sakaka smiled. "Don't be impatient about that. Sooner or later, there will be an interesting debate." Sakaka reached out and tightened the leather waistband. Hearing that the Buddha was in Mahavana, Venerable Asaji traveled from the Videha Republic to visit him. Staying overnight in a suburban forest, early in the morning, the Venerable went into the city of Vasali to beg for alms. At that time, Sakaka was walking with his belly puffed out with about a dozen disciples. Seeing Venerable Asaji, because of his clean beard and hair, walking solemnly, guessing that he was a disciple of the Buddha, he stopped and politely clasped hands with him. The manner of a wise man. "Dear monk, what connection does he have with the sect of the great monk Gautama?" Looking up, the Venerable Asaji saw a large, tall young man with a large belt tied tightly around his stomach and a group of smooth-faced, patent-skinned young men. I knew who it was, so I replied, "I am an uneducated disciple of that master, sir." "What a pleasure." Sakaka pretended to bow his head humbly. "I have long heard the great name of the great monk Gautama ringing like thunder in my ears. So isn't it interesting? How does he usually teach his disciples? To be more specific, what teachings does the monk Gautama often teach to his disciples?" "Hey, Agyavesana! Hey, young man!" The world-honored one often taught his disciples that the aggregate of form is impermanent, the aggregate of feeling is impermanent, the aggregate of perception is impermanent, the aggregate of mental formations is impermanent, the aggregate of consciousness is impermanent. As soon as he heard the monk call his name correctly, Sakaka felt cold, but he smiled coldly. "So that's all, monk?" "And more, young man. Because these forms, feelings, and consciousnesses are impermanent, they are also non-self, and all dharmas are selfless." Sakaka frowned. "Is that the essence of the teachings of the great monk Gautama?" "For the wise, for those with ears to hear, it is essential, but for stupid people, for those without ears to hear, it is very trivial, sir." Having finished speaking, Venerable Asaji smiled. But Sakaka did not understand that subtle meaning. He said loudly to everyone, "Is the world clear, or is it just me? I just heard bad things. The aggregate of form is impermanent, non-self. The aggregate of feeling is impermanent, non-self. Are all dharmas selfless? What is it? That teaching is truly cruel, truly harmful to the world. That teaching is the darkness, the devil, the poison, that has betrayed people and destroyed all that is beautiful and sacred in this world. Please curse that teaching. It is the disguise of the demon king, of hell. Unmask that inhuman dharma." Then Sakaka turned to Venerable Asaji. "Venerable monk, listen carefully. I, Sakaka, the teacher, the master of the royal family of Lichavi, will personally come to meet the monk Gautama to discuss and compete. I must expose and strip him of his terrible false teachings." Having finished speaking, Sakaka turned and left. The disciples also echoed, "Do you hear me? That teaching is not worth a penny when it is sold in the market. Who buys? Thick face." The Lichavi royal family was meeting in a large lecture hall to resolve difficult economic matters when Sakaka suddenly entered. Because Sakaka was a good teacher for their children, some of the royal family stood up to greet, some nodded, some just glanced, some warmly offered seats and water. Before Sakaka was seated, he quickly stood up, clasped his hands to greet the congregation, and said, "Dear gentlemen, respected gentlemen, a rare opportunity that will make our small city of Vasali famous throughout the world. You must know how to reach out your golden hand and grasp it." Everyone looked confused and looked questioning. Sakaka spoke eloquently. "Monk Gautama and his disciples have been coming to convert to our country recently. I have long heard about the wisdom of the monk Gautama. He has defeated most of the sect leaders and sect masters inside and outside the tradition in this world. King of the great and small states along the Ganga River Valley. All the famous rich men, lords, princes, ministers, wealthy men, all converted to the monk Gautama. However, coming here, in this territory, the monk Gautama will be disappointed, will suffer a humiliating defeat, and then be whisked away to another place. Why? Someone asked. Sakaka smiled triumphantly. What else? Because there will be an unprecedented debate, battle of wits, and competition between me and the monk Gautama. I've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. So today, I have come here to invite the great people of the Lichavi royal family to come with me. And on this occasion, you gentlemen will witness a rare and important event. The monk Gautama will have no place to live. An old man spoke cautiously. I do not deny that teacher Sakaka has outstanding and eloquent knowledge, learning and eloquence. I have also heard that he has thoroughly researched all philosophies inside and outside the tradition to the most profound and erudite level. But what about the great monk Gautama? It seems that in everything mentioned above, he is superior, is several heads above the world. Not only that, the dharma that he promoted and opened is a unique, genius dharma that has never existed before and will not be able to have it in the future. Isn't it true that our teacher is sure of victory? Sakaka patted his chest and replied, Gentlemen, please rest assured, I know the teachings of the monk Gautama very well, and I also see its holes, its flaws, its crude and bad arguments. These are pessimistic thoughts, the most pernicious, poisonous, childish, and stupid kind of nihilism in this world. It's not worthy for our children to hear it in their ears. We must use a broom to sweep it out of this clean and good land. So, gentlemen, please come with me today, then you will clearly see the truth. One person spoke solemnly. Please pay attention, young teacher. Both the Lichavi royal family and the Council of Generals with noble and prestigious positions traveling with him is an important matter. It's something to be careful about. We don't want to be humiliated. We don't want to be shamed in front of everyone. You have to be confident. You have to be 1000% determined to win. So we will send someone to accompany you. Sakaka with a strong, confident voice. That's right, surely. The person who is humiliated and defamed must be the monk Gautama and his disciples. I had already made that decision, like a stone with deep cuts before coming here to meet with you gentlemen. Please let me hear your teacher's arguments. The other elder continued to question, with specific examples, with images, not with distant, empty arguments like that. Sakaka was a bit surprised and disappointed, but he regained his composure very quickly. What worthy, wise questions, he pretended to praise. Okay, I will ask questions and refute the monk Gautama's reasoning with my own. For example, a young man is healthy and full of strength with bulging biceps and bulging tendons in his arms. With one hand, he firmly grasped the neck of a sheep as heavy as a mountain, unable to move. With his other hand, he grabbed a long fleece and pulled it all out without leaving a single trace. So do I. I will firmly grasp the teachings of the monk Gautama, and then I will strip away all the skin and scales of that terrible theory with my wisdom, knowledge, and insight. That is a specific example, with images, bones, and flesh. Do you agree with that? Some people were excited and rushed. Yes, that's right, very impressive. Sakaka had the opportunity to demonstrate his eloquence with his tongue. More. For example, a muscular middle-aged man has worked for a long time at a winery. His hands hold the racket skillfully. Without looking into the boiling wine pan, he could accurately stick the racket down to scoop up the wine powder from one side to the other, and then easily circle around the rim of the pan. Hardly a drop of foam escapes from his genius racket. Dear gentlemen, Saka raised his voice. Resolutely, the teachings of the monk Gautama are likened to wine bubbles covered with dust and impurities. I will use the racket of skill, and genius to scoop up the tainted teachings of the recluse Gautama from one end to the other, rounding up his learning and his impure knowledge as well. That is the second specific example. Sir, do you hear clearly? Listen clearly. One person laughed and said loudly, But where is the teacher's racket? Sakaka laughed. That's my argument. You are always joking. There was a very stubborn person who spoke slowly. That example is quite vivid, but is not compatible, if not has the opposite effect, respected teacher. Why so? Because when he takes out all the dust, impurities, and pollution, the teachings of the monk Gautama will remain the purest, and purest in the world. Surely you don't want that? Sakaka's face turned pale, and he thought to himself, we can't underestimate this white-clothed congregation. Then his mind worked extremely fast, and he replied, that argument is very accurate, but you have heard it wrong. I say the teachings of the monk Gautama are dusty, polluted, impure. Save all of them, not the dust, pollution, and impurities of that teaching. Then you can hear it. So, gentlemen, do you need to hear more examples? You can listen. Sakaka continued. For example, an alcoholic, whenever he sees alcohol, he drinks it. He holds the wine in his hand, sometimes upside down, sometimes placed on this side, sometimes placed on the other side, or gulping it all down as desired. Likewise, the teachings of the monk Gautama are about sharing that wine. I will be at my discretion depending on the moment, when I put it on this side, when I put it on that side, when it's face down, when it's heads up, or I can gulp it all down easily with reason, with facts, with my sharp reasoning skills. There was a burst of laughter, and then an excuse to ask, are you drunk? Again, there were bursts of laughter. A joyful atmosphere filled the hall. Thinking that everyone was convinced, unexpectedly, an old man arrogantly said, not sure, teacher. It's not easy to gulp it all down in one gulp. The recluse Gautama is not a person with a name or no real reality, not a sieve like all of us here. His education, morality, wisdom, and even his eloquence were famous throughout Jambudvipa, not without his talent. That's right, another voice chimed in. That dharma is not easy to lie still and let the teacher pull it all over like wool, like removing all the foam from wine. It's not so easy to drink wine face down or drink it all up. A large number of our royal children and generals have converted to him. A number of rich people, famous families, and even ordinary people have become their followers. Another person continued, that caution is indeed necessary. But those sincere reminders were diluted by the crowd. A large number of people simultaneously stood up and cheered Sakaka. Let's go together. Surely the monk Gautama will suffer a miserable defeat. Surely our capital Vaisali will be famous throughout the world. Then Sakaka, along with more than half of the elders in the congregation, pulled in about 100 more disciples, loudly unfurling flags, sounding drums, clanging gongs, and noisily set off. Arriving at the large forest outside the city of Vaisali, they saw a large monastery in the distance on the other side of the hill. They stopped. Around here, there are a number of monks meditating or walking among the rows of trees. Despite the drought, this place still retains its peaceful and cool green color. Glancing at the quiet scene, Sakaka felt a vague fear in his heart, but he calmed down immediately. Sakaka approached a monk and politely asked, Dear monk, where is Master Gautama now? The monk stopped walking, looked gently, and asked, Who are you? Sakaka introduces, I am a teacher of the royal Lichavi family along with my disciples, and here are several hundred great people of the ancient city of Vaisali, wanting to come and see the person called the world-honored one. The monk smiled. Yet I thought you were going into battle and happened to stop by here. Sorry, I misunderstood. Then the bhikkhu spoke and pointed with his hand. Great eloquent Sakaka Ajivesana. The venerable master is there, under a big tree right in the forest in front of him. It seemed that our master was aware of this boastful and cheerful visit. Once again, Sakaka felt scared and turned pale. Even the name of the clan, the nickname, and the intention of the argument, he had not yet confessed or said it, but even an ordinary monk like this already knew. In addition, the bhikkhu continued, Please tighten the waistband a little more. The so-called words, texts, syntax, heavenly scriptures, thousands of volumes in there seem to be in turmoil, restless. Sakaka hurriedly walked quickly with his congregation. He thought to himself, there are signs and symptoms that are not very good. Not only have I not yet grasped the wisdom, insight, and conduct of the monk Gautama, but even an anonymous monk disciple whose words, manner of speaking, and eyes have implicitly hidden it. Inside the abilities, the superior wisdom, are already unbelievable. Haven't met the monk Gautama yet I'm already so weak and shaken like this. Sakaka and his entourage arrived at the Buddha's place, and he was stunned. That Buddha's appearance is so brilliant. In him, whatever shines from him radiates purity, gentleness, simplicity, majesty, calmness, serenity, joy, and completeness. Among Sakaka's entourage, there were a number of people who also stood still and admired him like that. Some people kneeled down to pay homage. The other group of people greeted cordially. Some people only state their full name and lineage. Some people just clasped their hands. Some looked indifferently and remained silent, saying nothing. Everyone then found a suitable seat. Sakaka slowly, gently took a deep breath to regain his composure and peace, then raised his stubborn voice. "Hey, Monk Gotama! Today I, the royal family, General Likavi, and some disciples came here to ask questions. Please answer our reasonable questions." The Buddha clearly knew all the thoughts and intentions of the young man in the congregation, knowing both thoughts and questions lying in the mind of Sakaka, but he just calmly seemed like nothing happened. "Hey Agivesana, Tathagata is very willing. You are arbitrary." "Yes," Sakaka replied. "I wonder how Sman Gotama usually only teaches the disciples, and really how to teach that teaching." "Agivesana, listen here. Tathagata often religious disciples that sharp, longevity, thought, practice, and aggregates are impermanent because impermanence should be selfless, and all the dharma is selfless. That is the original doctrine of Tathagata," Sakaka asked. "That's just that?" "Yes, Tathagata usually only teaches that much," Sakaka laughed. "So can I give me a Gotama, for example? From there, Samon Gotama clearly sees the childishness, the crude, the badness of the Dharma. Be free as you like, this Ajivesana. Tathagata really wants to hear your example." "Hey, Samon Gotama, listen. For example, trees, varieties have enough living plastic to develop well, grow well. They all rely on the earth, grow up by the earth, green and then bloom fruit thanks to the grace of the land. For example, farm work, garden, strawberry growing, silkworms, also rely on the earth, then we have the rice to eat. Without soil, there is no life of sentient beings, right, Sir Gotama?" Buddha smiled. "That is just a premise. You even go into the main content, Ajivesana." "Yes," Sakaka replied. "From that example, now I go to the thesis to break, smash the passionate ants of Samon Gotama. Samon Gotama said that the 5 aggregates are impermanent. The 5 aggregates are non-self. All dharma is non-self. And my argument is the opposite. Why? Because thanks to the 5 aggregates, relying on the 5 aggregates, people eat, speak, go, stand, think, work to create the joys and evil in this world. All species of herbs are thanks to the soil that exists. They are relying on the 5 aggregates to survive, to grow like that, Sirman Gotama." The Buddha calmly said, "Hey Ajivesana, is this what you concluded for your point of view? The aggregates are my ego, the aggregates are my ego, and thought, onions, awakening the same? All species of herbs are thanks to the earth, sentient beings also thanks to the 5 aggregates, that self to create miserable and good evil in this world." Sakaka responded quite reserved. "Yes, Sir Gotama. I hear so many people argue like that. Others have nothing here. Tathagata just wants to hear your faces, and you must determine that view is yours. Yes, I would like to confirm. Sack life thought was myself. It is sentient beings thanks to that fall to survive, create the realm and make the world. If there was no 5 aggregates, that self was a base. If the entire 5 aggregates are not us, our self, how are sentient beings that exist opened Gotama? It seemed that his atheist theory, nothingness for him with that so-called self, was not suitable for the truth. With the truth, not compatible with the right mind. Some superficial people in Sakaka's association heard their teachers argue with the argument very true, very convincing, and clapped their hands and praised. Others are more deep. They are cautious and careful because they see the spirit of Samon Gotama still calm like the deep sea floor without waves. Sakaka seemed to be proud and welcomed. The Buddha smiled in his mind, slowly saying, "Hey Agavasana, so Tathagata will ask you, what do you please answer that, okay?" "Yes," Sakaka replied. "Please naturally go to Samon Gotama. Tathagata asks you. For example, King Pasenadi Kosala, King Senia Bimbisara, Magadha made the peak ceremony to the throne, ruled his kingdom. These kings have the right to murder to die, have the right to confiscate the wealth, the property of the confiscation, have the right to exile the exile? Sir Samon Gotama, the small king ruled the Republic of Vaji, the Republic of Mala, the Republic of Videha also gained the right to do that, let alone the other king. Why do the kings have that right to open Ajivesana? Sir, because the king is the owner of a country, he has the authority to decide the situation as well as reward the fortune for his people. The Buddha nodded. That's right, Ajivesana. You were right. The kings have the right to own their nationality. Sakaka also nodded. Of course, Samon Gautama. The Buddha continued. So Ajivesana, if the feeling of thought is that we are ours, is it mine, then that we take the 5 aggregates to own, like the people in our country? Of course, Samon Gautama. In other words, the ego is the king and the 5 aggregates are the nature. Of course, there must be that self possessing it. So what do you think, this Ajivesana? Examples of aggregates, that is, the body of the physical life created by the wind of the wind. It is us, our own ownership, has enough authority to decide. So when this body is sick, we have the right to tell him not to get sick. When this body is old, do we have the right to tell him not to be old? When this body dies, we have the right to tell him not to die. Can we do that? Answer the Tathagata Ajivesana. With only one example opened above, a tightening question of the Buddha, the young Sakaka knew very well that his theory was completely collapsed, forced to be removed, but because of shame did not dare to confess the truth, had to bow silent. The Buddha asked the second time with another expression, Hey Ajivesana, this body is caused by karma because rice porridge is nourished. It will be dominated by laws. It must suffer illnesses, old men and death. It is impossible to tell him not to be old, don't get sick, don't die. It turned out that we were completely helpless, had been deprived of ownership, clearly saw that it was not us, our self. Sakaka's face was re-went, but he could not open his mouth before his association. The Buddha raised his voice. Hey Ajivesana, now is the time when you have to answer, not when you keep silent. When Tathagata asked who about a problem suitable for the truth, true to the truth, asked for the 3rd time and he still refused to open his mouth, his head would be broken into 7 pieces. At that time, the owner of Saka turned out to be a yaka, Dasoa demon, holding Kim Kang's mace to emit a stream of light, sitting on the top of Sakaka's head, saying in his ear, saying, Hey Ajivesana, if the Blessed One asks you for the 3rd time and you are still stubbornly refusing to answer, I will use this Kim Kang pestle with power to beat your head to break out of 7 pieces, not redundant, 1, no shortage. The incident occurred as above, only the Buddha, the saints, and Sakaka saw. He was terrified, extremely terrified. The hair on his head stood up and his sweat was like a bath. In this country, Sakaka could only rely on the power of the Buddha, so he stammered and said, World-honored one, please ask again and you will immediately answer. Hey Ajivesana, if the aggregates are me, myself, I have the right to say that the aggregates you should not be sick, do not be old, do not die. That is impossible, dear Buddha. The Buddha continued, you should consider carefully, thoroughly, carefully, and then answer. Do not let the following words not compatible with the previous or vice versa. If the words before and after are not compatible, the heterogeneity will lead to the break, the rejection of your thesis right away. Sakaka bowed down. I understand, dear Buddha. Then Tathagata will continue. Not only does this body feel that the feeling, longevity, perception, thought, psychological states, mind, consciousness, perception, they are us, are mine, is self, my fall, is my own ownership. Sir, it's not like that. Do we have the power to say that be happy not to be sad? Let's grasp the idea well, don't grasp bad ideas. Please note, experience, keep good deeds. Do not record, experience, keep evil and evil. Sir, it's not possible. So we cannot make it wrong, order to give the 5 aggregates. Is that what you have determined? Yes. So is there reasonable to say that the 5 aggregates are me, is ours, myself? That is wrong, is delusion, is the evil view, the white blessed one. So when the 5 aggregates are not us, ourself, it will kill, change according to its own law? Yes, that's right. So the 5 aggregates are often impermanent? White, they are impermanent. Impermanence is they suffering or lost. Both miserable or lost are impermanent, so they are dukkha. Dear Buddha, the Buddha raised his voice. Hey Ajivesana, what is non-self? It is impermanent. Because of non-self impermanence, all of them are dukkha. It is the seamless, inevitable argument. Immortal, impermanent, dukkha is true, is truth. It is not a view, an opinion. Argument is the theory of Tathagata. They are the knowledge of wisdom. Have you seen that clearly? Bach, I have seen it clearly. The person who accepts the five aggregates is me, is mine. Myself is like accepting that dukkha is me, myself. Right, sir? Not rationally agavesana. Thanks to the impermanence, the egolessness of the five aggregates, the evil people can become good. Thanks to impermanence, non-self, morality, reason, love in the world will be established. Because of impermanence, non-self of dharma, the new death is lost, the heart is born. So that dharma is not pessimistic, bib, negative, abadism, maliciousism, toxic, darkness for life, as you have announced to the assembly in Vasali. So you used to be the guru of the world, to be a religion for a whole family, whose primary knowledge about righteousness, evil, about reality and real thing, what needs willow and what should not accept you. If you do not know, try to ask how to enter the teachings of Tathagata. Do not understand, have not seen the dharma of Tathagata, how to erase and smash that teaching. Sakaka lowered his face, not daring to look at anyone. At that time, there were 3 Vapa, Bhaddiya, Nadikasapa. They saw that the royal, noble, and generals' councils were mostly fallen, and their children. So Vapa's venerable said, "World-honored one, there is an example of arising in the heart of the disciple. Please allow the Blessed One to allow the disciple to say a few words." "Yes," he kept saying. "Hey, respectfully." Vapa said, "Someone wanted the core of the tree and needed the trees to take the hammer to go to the forest. Seeing a high, large, energetic banana tree, not yet blooming, he cut the banana tree to the root, cut the tops, leave all branches, and then stripped off all the banana sheaths out. He slowly peeled from outside to inside, but did not find the tree of the lake is the core of the tree." Vapa religion suddenly raised her voice. "Banana tree has no tree core is you, Mr. Agravesana. Our guru has cut the root, cut off the tops, and stripped off all your studies and knowledge, but there is nothing inside. Even if the leather strap is large, the belly of your big belly is also empty inside. If it is, there is only meat, fat, real objects, 16 organs, parts, talks, and urine. Yet your family dared to patting the chest with everyone in Lichavi that I don't see Saman or Brahmin, no matter which schools, whether it is the homepage, the masters, or the rank. The master claimed to be a Buddha, which holy every time he responded to us. No one was not nervous, both sutras, trembling. Even if we questioned the column without the mind, it also shook, was terrified, sweating, the situation was human. What is the truth now that he religious agivasana? Conversation with our religion, argument, fighting, eloquence with German senses. Why your sweat exudes from the forehead, flows down your face, absorbed through the shirt, and fell to the ground, and the virtue of the guru of Afor we don't. Our guru is always the same as ever, always staying in the realm of pure land is because of that, revealing the teacher of the teacher, Ajivesana. At that time, Sakaka sat cowering, her face was pale and cold sweating. He was silent, did not dare to look at anyone, did not dare to utter a word. In the Sakaka's entourage, someone saw Sakaka like that, so angry, exclaimed, "It is clear that we don't know the tiger, brazen items. Everything is right, yes, dear Buddha." Other people continue. Can you give any audience to say that arguing, fighting? Accompanying Sakaka with King Dumka is the person who is on duty, deep and knowledgeable when seeing Sakaka completely blunt all initial anaerobic, dumbfounded due to failure. Wanting to educate the boy's extravagance so that the Buddha said, "World-honored one, please allow me to give an example. Near the village there is a shallow water pond in which there is a crab living. The other day there was a group of wild children. They waded into the pond to catch the crab to play. Whenever the crabs brought them, the more they took the tree and the stone broke it. Just like that until the crab didn't have any more. I had to lie still. I could not stir, could not go anywhere." Venerable Buddha. Also the evil, stupid, shallow, self-shallow, more than people, more than this, the young Sakaka, the respectable teacher of our children as the crabs were wisdom by the wisdom of Germany. The Blessed One broke. From now on, perhaps Sakaka will be better. There will be no more extravagant thoughts, pride like that anymore. Too embarrassing, Sakaka shouted. Hey Dhammika, he stopped talking. I know what I will do. After saying that, Sakaka came out, respectfully paying homage to the Buddha, and then saying, World-honored one, today I really see your intellectual stature. The Dharma thought that was simple, thought to be shallow, thought that superficiality turned out very high, very deep, very poisonous, can dispel countless clouds of smoke. Blindness has covered all thoughts and philosophy, tradition from past to present. I was wrong. Veda, Austria, and Thu and all sects were so wrong. A sour, bitter, stupid, pathetic mistake. But I am extremely grateful and happy when I am open the French eyes, clearly see my studies. My knowledge is full of superficial and full of defects. Dear virtue of compassion for what you have committed. The Buddha knew how to change from the thinking, the mind of the young man, so he opened his words and core to create a predestined relationship for Sakaka to step the first step into the Dharma. Hey Ajivesana, if you have any questions, you will ask, Tathagata will answer. World-honored one, about seeing my mistake of the five aggregates as me, my own ownership is evil and fascinated. But the teaching of the Blessed One about the five aggregates is non-self. I have not been very thorough. May the Blessed One more deployed in that. Thanks to the self-evil, evil people can become good and good, might be able to become holy. At the same time, more about the benefits and results of victory when the ego truth has been seen, have been applied in the practice of practice. The Buddha praised, Hey Agivesana, that question is correct. Is the index finger that indicates the core of the Dharma. So listen, that selfless teaching is not the one to be aware of, but to really contemplate, dive deep, the ultimate killing. Those who practice the Dharma clearly see the five aggregates will be skeptical, achieve wisdom, away from suffering, afflictions, every dukkha, to live happily and escape in the virtue of Saman. Such a person is called the disciple in the Dharma of Tathagata. World-honored one. Sakaka asked continued, please tell me more about that wisdom away, free all dukkha, so that a bhikkhu was called the holy saint Alahan. Disadvantages, fulfilled the full virtue, has completed all parts in this world, abandoned all the burden of the five aggregates, no longer a boundary route can lead to rebirth in the future? Hey Ajivesana, if you want to be like that, the monk Ku must see the five aggregates by wisdom. Clearly visible by wisdom means that it must be true, exactly as its nature. Accordingly, all the aggregates in the past, the aggregates in the future, the aggregates in the present, the inner color, the aggregates outside, the rough aggregates, the color of the aggregates, the overwhelming aggregates, the low aggregates, noble, close aggregates, far-fetched color. All that aggregates are not us, not my's, not ourself. They are impermanent, predestined, no self-nature. No reality, no self. Sensation, longevity, perception, thought, psychological states, onions, and awareness, consciousness, must also be provided by wisdom as real. When seeing the five aggregates is not us, is mine, the monk Ku separates all the possessions. Thanks to all the possessions, the bhikkhu Ku cut off the craving wires. Also thanks to our escape in mind, clearly seeing all the selflessness, the bhikkhu Ku left the comparisons of ta people, more and more. To extinguish, to deduct all the chronic, sangha, ego, man, liat man, liat man. Also thanks to clearly selflessness, predestined birth, the bhikkhu Ku clearly sees the Dharma not the paragraph, not often, so vinly all the evil view. Hey Agivesana, with all craving that has been cut off, with all the chronic escapes, with all the evil ants have been subtracted, the monk Ku knows himself, leaving, all the burdens have been placed down, all duties have been completed, will no longer be reborn in the next life. And that is the holy Arahant who completely liberated all the yoke worn on earth. Hearing the Blessed One preach so thoroughly, Sakaka was so happy, saying, Oh, it is deep, vast, but also astonished, surprisingly sacrifices. A hair, a dust seed of Ta Kien cannot have a foothold in the eyes of this Ming. Indeed, the Blessed One is the great wisdom that has shone in the dark, delusion of the child and the whole world. Even the silk hair of what is me, is mine, myself. Now I really see, really understand. Not only is it, but everyone here really opened the eyes, really knew what wisdom was. So right? The whole assembly of the Ko responded. Indeed, there was one step out, paying homage to the Buddha, and then saying, It seems that we have attached importance to knowledge and understanding, the knowledge and understanding only to grow, accumulate, and bowl for the ego. Thanks to the Blessed One, we know what wisdom is. That wisdom is to see and to live in accordance with the truth, not to show off. Huyendam, Luan, gratitude to the Blessed One. Sakaka regained his confidence, his old form. He fisted to everyone to be silent and spoke to his association. Dear people, with my studies, I have some specific examples vividly about this, about the event today. That is, if someone is with a drunken elephant, he still has some hope to escape. But if the world has an extravagant person who dares to fight with the great Saman Gautama, he will not know where to flee. Similarly, a person is in the fire of fire on the four sides. However, he was a little lucky to escape, but if he had missed foolishness and fighting with the great Saman Gautama, a little bit of a safe gap was clogged. A person was bitten by a poisonous snake. He still had some hope for treatment. But if there was a challenge of discussing with the great Sagotama, a rare opportunity to defend his body was completely desperate. Then Sakaka turned to the Buddha. Dear Buddha, some of my recent examples for you are meaningless and frivolous. It is just a dust, pollution, uncleanness that the Blessed One has been alienated, except for a long time. But that is my true thinking and words when my eyes have been opened, my mind has been bright. Today I was miserably defeated, lost all the money and all the knowledge accumulated from many generations of his father, inaugurated all knowledge, Department of Tree, Kauman, including the thousands of bolts are tightly in the belly full of fat, real, stubborn, and impure. But I am very happy, peaceful and happy, because I have removed a lot, both outside and inside. After saying that, Sakaka removed the waistband of the waistband, with a slow gesture, put down on the feet very slowly, and then bowed his head to hug the dust of the master, saying, Son, Sakaka Agjivsana. Today was completely photographer, has been in favor. Please have thousands of spots of the German wheels to prove it. And I also really at the beginning of goodness, improving the right for the benefit, for happiness, for long-term peace for me later. Sakaka placed both hands on the top of his head and continued. To demonstrate all this sincerity, tomorrow, I would like to invite the world-honored one and the Sangha of saints to come to my humble abode, so that I, along with the royal family and the Lichavi generals, can have the opportunity to offer alms and place the noon meal. The Buddha silently accepted. Returning to his residence, Sakaka widely announced to the royal family, Lichavi General Council used to know that, Hey, noble and gentle, this is an opportunity for 1,000 years to have a new virtue of birth. The Blessed One has an immeasurable wisdom, immeasurable great compassion, inconsistent, fearless power, infinite virtue, endless knowledge, extremely understanding, supreme personality, invincible miracles, unmatched language, blessed generals. So listen to me. Tomorrow you should be well prepared, decency to bring my own, the most delicious and noble food to make offerings to the great Blessed One and the Holy Sangha. Doing so, blessing both and winds many generations will bloom fragrant flowers, full of fullness for you. Listen to me. Then at night was over, the dawn was formal, the royal families, the Lichavi noble brought more than 100 parts of the upper object that was meticulously cooked to Sakaka's house to contribute to the fairly solemn offering. They did their best because it was time for economic difficulties, famine due to drought, crop failure in this country. On time, the Buddha covered the red coral color, carrying a bowl of licorice jackfruit core with hundreds of bhikkhu kuhan to Sakaka. The generals, full of arrogant arrogance, Lichavi heard the royal father recounting about the personality, the wisdom of Saman Gautama had some admiration of life also contributed one hand for this offering. When the Buddha and the monk finished, Sakaka knelt on the right one, clasped his hands and said, Pray for the treasure of this blessing will achieve happiness and peace to everyone in the royal family, the noble Lichavi. The Buddha knew Sakaka would become a useful personality later. He intended to support him, so he taught. Hey Agivesana, your wish is good, but the merit of goodness in the offer today is not so simple. Please hear. This Lichavi assembly relies on you, and you are relying by the Tathagata, isn't it? Yes. Again, this almsgiving achievements is due to your initiative, your actions. Is that so? Yes. So the Tathagata will prove the truth that the meritorious fruit of this charity and offering, relying on you, who have not yet completely eradicated all defilements, will be achieved for all the donors in the royal and noble Licchavi family. And the meritorious fruit of this charity and offering, relying on the Tathagata, who have completely eradicated all defilements, will be achieved for you, Ajivasana. Understanding the mystery of cause and effect, the wisdom as well as the boundless compassion of the Buddha, Sakaka was deeply moved. He bowed his head, tears red, and replied softly, "I understand, O world-honored one. I am grateful to the world-honored one." Dear ladies and gentlemen, you have just listened to the video about the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, adapted from the work A Life, a Sun and Moon by Master Geoy Duck. This video series will be broadcast at 7 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the YouTube channel Buddhist Story. We sincerely thank you for watching. To not miss the next episodes, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. If you find the content useful, please share this video with your relatives and friends. All your comments are very valuable to us. Please leave comments below the video so we can discuss and share together. Thank you, and see you again in the next episodes of the video series, The Life of Buddha Shakyamuni.